Writing, recording, is there an awareness from the beginning of how the song will translate when played live, or do you feel it's out on the road?
Generally, when we're writing, in the early stages, anything's allowed. And then as we start to refine what's going to make it on the record, nothing that we can't play live is going to make it on the record. Because in fact, it feels like, in a way, what we've been building all along is this repertoire for, an excellent show. It's really cool every time we make a record to see how the songs fit in with the existing repertoire. It's like as though they were written to expand the set or enhance the set or bring another dimension to what we do live. So I don't think generally, if we can't picture it live, it doesn't make it on the record. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think it's true to the extent where like live is like your personality, and it's like you may go into a shop and see a crazy purple suit, but then you put it on, you're like, that does not look like me. And I think that there's an element of what we're doing, which we may get outside with an arrangement, or we may try instruments that we wouldn't normally try. And I don't really worry about whether we're going to be able to have the same instrument on stage or not, but it's whether it fits within the identity and the personality of what Metric is as a live band.
So are there certain songs from your albums that you always gravitate to, regardless of how many times you've played them? And on the other hand, are some songs that represent a moment in time for the band, but you don't feel connected to anymore?
Well, it's a pretty amazing commitment when you think about it. When you make a record, regardless of the scale of, what you're doing, is that you really have to live with it in the best case scenario for the rest of your life. Like if all goes well, in fact, you'll be playing that song for the rest of your life, which is true of, there are songs from every record we've made that we play. So particularly Old World Underground, for whatever reason, like Dead Disco and more recently Combat Baby, which we've been doing acoustically, the sentiment and the energy and the vibe of those songs, that's just stayed with us as sort of key identity of who the band is. And there's songs from Live It Out that also, like Empty is like that from Live It Out. So from every record, there are songs that just seem to make it into the permanent playlist. And other ones that there really aren't any that I am ashamed of, I just feel like it's your process and you do your best. But there's some that, you move on and it doesn't really make sense to bring them along.
Okay, great. And Fantasies was the first release on Metric Music International. You now have your own label paired with the ownership of Giant Studios. Do you feel more in control of how and when you release new music?
I think that the decision to start our own label was a conscious decision to react to the peril of the record industry at the time. We met with a lot of people at the beginning of this record, and we went and sat in offices and had long, annoying business lunches and did that stuff. And we talked to lots of people in the record industry about what we could do and working together. And we just felt like really at the end of it, there's no one that was better suited to guide this band forward than the two of us and our manager, Matt. And it just made so much sense. And then when we actually sort of put all the the remnants of why musicians feel like they need the record industry behind them. It's like feeling of acceptance and feeling of that you're going to be given some break that you couldn't create for yourself, and all of those emotions. Then we actually just looked at our situation realistically and realized that we're sort of in the perfect position to do what we did, and we have a relatively substantial fan base, and we know how to access them, and we have a relationship with them, and we have a history of touring, and we know how to support ourselves touring, and we know we have our own studio and we can make our own records. And it was like all of a sudden it was like dominoes were falling down of reasons why there's no better way to do this than the hard way, which was what we did. And it was hard, and it's been difficult. And it wasn't until sort of like a couple of years later, recently, where we actually sat down with the company and looked at like the entire books of the last 2 years. And it's pretty funny. Like, you understand why record labels all go under. It's a bizarre business to have ventured into. But I feel really proud that we did it just for ourselves mostly. And happy that we sort of set ourselves up to do whatever we want to do. And we can release whatever we want, whenever we want, and do it in whatever fashion we want. And I don't think that for this group of people, there's many other ways that this could have gone forward other than that.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it was such a key change in my life, you know, because I feel like all along it's been kind of a thorn in my side of feeling like, why do I have to seek the approval of these people in order to do what I want to do? Especially because, you know, I couldn't really find people that I thought were that great, you know, like I feel like if I could have, I don't know, I found that person that was just like, oh my God, you're brilliant. You know exactly what to do. You have a vision. You understand music. You see it, like you're going to make me a star, you know? I really think we wanted that person. And I think a lot of what held me back actually previously was kind of feeling like I was still seeking that validation and feeling really like, where is that person for me? And it was such a relief to just let it go, you know, and realize it was kind of naive. And, you know, these guys, and they are guys, like are generally, just for whatever reason, it's not clicking for me, and they don't see me and I don't see them. And it was part of what I think there's such a positive energy around Fantasies is because I was finally free of that sort of high school feeling pursuit of like trying to get the football player to like the kids in drama class. It's just like, look, I'm going to do this the way that I'm going to do it. And we all understand each other. And so I'm really happy to have lost what was on the verge of becoming a sort of bitterness about the music industry. Because I'm not bitter. I have no issue now that I don't have to ask them for permission to do what I want to do.
And was this record label a conscious decision for your own creative freedom, or more of a necessity due to a volatile record industry?
Going back to what we were saying about how I feel like I'm just in a better mood since we've started our own company, is that when you feel like your life is in your own hands and you're making decisions, good or bad, and the consequences land with you, at least for me, I just feel so much more open to trying things. Like, I feel like if I was signed to a label and they told me I had to do this Twilight thing, and I just feel like I would have come at it with such a different attitude and been like, well, what does that represent? And what, you know, and instead I saw it as part of my life. It's like, I totally want to write with Howard Shore. I really want to, you know, go to upstate New York and check out his studio, and like I could own it as my own life instead of it being part of someone else's, you know, plan for me or something. It's actually been funny on this. I was looking back, Jimmy, by accident at the calendar from like, you know, it's been 2 years since we've been touring Fantasies. And I saw on the calendar this like insane radio schedule thing in the UK that we did, where we went to like 5 cities in each day and like went to all these places. And I remember at the time we were there and we were just, both of us, it was the most hilarious state to see us in, because we're used to being like, you know, whatever with the man. And then, you know, like what, you know, idiot said that we had to do this, and people don't even understand what it's like to be a musician, and all those things that musicians feel about how their, you know, management is sometimes disconnected or whatever. And we're just like, oh man, there's no one to blame. This was totally our idea. Like 100% came from us. And it still was really hard, but as I was saying, it made it like kind of a choice we made instead of something we were being asked to do like homework.
You now have an extensive soundtrack resume with Zombieland, Scott Pilgrim and Twilight. How did this Hollywood collaboration come about? Was it something you were actively looking to do?
One of the interesting byproducts of this whole trajectory we've been on with Fantasies has been working on a lot of films with people. And interestingly, I think that's kind of the first sort of miniature break we got was Olivier Assayas, a filmmaker from France, made a movie called Clean, where he cast us in the first scene. This was around Old World Underground, so it's like 2003. And he cast us playing the song and having lines, which is actually really funny for us to look back at. But that sort of launched us into some sort of something in France. It was really fun to arrive there and have people know us, and it was the beginning of many collaborations with filmmakers over the years. And the most recent ones on this record, for whatever reason, have been more high profile, you know, including the Catherine Bigelow event at MoMA, which was great, and obviously the Twilight thing with Howard Shore, and, you know, Zombieland, which I forgot that we had the song
we
in.
we all did actually, and Josh and Jules didn't even know about it, and they went to go see the movie like on a day off in Toronto. The credits roll, and they're wow.
Yeah, I was in a hotel room and it came on. I was just like, what is that? And then I was like, oh yeah, I think I remember saying yes to that. So, for me, it's just so cool because Jimmy and I have always talked about wanting to do film music. Obviously, there's a difference between having a song and a soundtrack and composing for film. So that's what was nice about working with Howard on the Twilight thing, is we were actually writing part of the score with him. And you hear our melodies like playing through the movie. It's cool. But I'd love to see more of that in my life going forward. And on my solo record, I went a little bit further into like the kind of arrangements and moods that I'd like to develop in film music. Wouldn't, I don't think, ever be like on a metric record that you could do that, but I hope that we get to keep doing work with filmmakers.
So has his Hollywood exposure noticeably changed your audience?
I think that kind of one of the cool things about working with Howard for us was that, like Emily, you were just hinting at, it wasn't necessarily, can we license this song and put it in a movie? It was, we went up to Howard's studio and he played us the last scene of the film, and he like played his mock-up of like the last 3 or 4 minutes of music leading up until the credits, and then kind of it went silent, and he's like, so this is where you guys kind of step in and do what you want to do. And for the first time, it was being given a certain framework, but not a full framework, and yet not complete freedom. Like there was already a key set, there was a relative sort of tempo, there was a definite emotion. So it's really the first time, we've ever written sort of as metric and done anything like that before. And I just found it a really cool challenge. It was something that was new and interesting, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it wasn't, for me as a producer, it was one of the first times that it wasn't necessarily, do I love what's coming out the speakers? It was like, do I think what's coming out the speakers is right for what this is asking me to do? And, there's a moment where you sort of have to put your own, like your personal thing aside and go for the greater good of what you're being hired to do and what the project is about. And that was a really, really cool process. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and it was really organic. We were both relieved that it wasn't some slick, Hollywood guy. I was just scared of that situation.
Howard couldn't be less slick Hollywood guy.
Just like he's a proper musician. He's worked with Ornette Coleman and he's played rock and roll his whole life. So he totally has the chops, but it surprised me how organic the whole process was, because when we left Howard's, we just went back to New York and sat at the piano and just wrote, we just wrote a song at the piano. It wasn't this big, like, lights, camera, action, like people in the studio. And the main thing that I was proud of with us is, what I think a lot of people don't realize is when people hand an opportunity like that to on the scheme of things, pretty unknown band like Metric, it's not so much even just the music you deliver, but it's like, could our company and our whole operation, like, can we communicate clearly, get the job done on time? Like, it was really important to me that it's not like, oh, great, like we hired these kids who don't know what they're doing. And I was really proud that we, didn't screw it up. Like we really fulfilled what they were looking for. And I'm still bummed that I didn't get to write something really like moody and dark and sinister, because when it first came our way, I was sure I was going to get to. But, I had to stretch my happy muscles, which was really hard. I think my back is still out of whack from that, but it was great, and I'd do it again anytime.
And there's some dusty minor chords sitting around the back of our studio that didn't get used.
Yeah, we had to cut all the minor chords out. As a bummer.